Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following. Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less.
Smithville Fiber, the Gigacity Company, fiber internet, HD, and digital IPTV in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk, an updated strategic plan that dictates how state forest will be managed for the next 5 years is up for public input. But will feedback fall on deaf ears?
Is it meaningful public input? Is it a meaningful solicitation of that input? And I would argue that no, it's not, that they're still playing these games with us.
Ahead, the DNR's response to criticism. A statewide organization dedicated to ending sexual assault gets a new start after falling apart last year.
We don't have the resources and people don't know where to turn if they've been assaulted.
We go to the statehouse to talk with a lawmaker who shaped the new organization and will help guide its direction. Plus, enjoying a cup of joe with a purring cat on your lap. It's popular overseas, and now 2 entrepreneurs are working to bring the first cat cafe to Indiana. Those stories, plus the latest news headlines from around the state, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Environmental groups are challenging a new strategic plan laid out by the state's Division of Forestry. The document provides guidelines for how the state's forest will be managed for the next 5 years. The state's Department of Natural Resources hosted a series of public forums this week, but as Sarah Whitmire reports, critics say there should be more opportunities and more time for feedback.
Thank you.
On Monday night, it was a packed house at the Indiana State Museum.
Yes, but across the eastern United States.
Some of these folks say they drove for hours for a chance to comment on the DNR Division of Forestry's new proposed strategic plan.
Try to do the best we can with the best science we have.
The 22-page document will set the direction for the state's forests for the next 5 years. The DNR held 3 public meetings this week. Far fewer, critics say, than when the agency adopted its last strategic plan.
And on that plan, they had a lot of initial stakeholder meetings, they had more public meetings, they had a clear public comment period. They posted on their website, they had a response document.
I would disagree. I think this process is very similar to what we did in the last strategic plan. I mean, we've had 3 public meetings. We had one in the north, the central, and the south. Actually, we're using this location that we used last time. The northern side is exactly the same location as we used the previous plan. I can't remember where we held the previous plan meeting down south, but yeah, we're pretty much following the same model.
After presenting the plan Monday, the DNR opened the floor to public comment.
The money that is being collected are just another one of these corporate scams to take our resources and turn them into commodities.
There's no assurance that there'll be a response document, so people will have some way of knowing what the state's official response to their comments is, and whether it had an impact on the plan. I would just call it, black box public solicitation. It just leaves you wondering.
The plan calls for maintaining the current level of logging in state forests, which is 14 million board feet per year for the next 5 years. And while that's not an increase over current logging, it does represent a huge increase over the last several years.
The most they ever logged was a couple million board feet a year. Now they're at 14 to 15 million board feet a year. So it's way too much cutting. You can't take these forests in a vacuum.
The DNR maintains that timber harvesting is done according to sustainable forestry practices, and the annual amount harvested equates to only about 60% of the forest's annual growth. Critics also object to the increase in clear cutting. That's when all the trees in a given area are uniformly taken down. But you won't find the term clear cutting in the strategic plan.
We don't have strategically in the plan that we're going to increase X number of acres in clear cuts. We've been making openings for as long as we've been managing the forest. We're at about 600 or 700 acres, and we've got that all charted out, and that's not done necessarily ahead of time. Most of those decisions are made on the ground by the foresters who do that work.
The plan also calls for user fees, the selling of, quote, non-essential tracts of forest, and development within the forest, things such as new recreational facilities and cabins. Stant says ultimately the problem he sees with the plan comes down to one thing. It's revenue-driven. The strategic plan offers a breakdown of the Division of Forestry's funding. The forestry property tax, which accounted for more than a quarter of the agency's funding in 2008, is gone. Money from the general fund has replaced some of that, but the increase in timber sales is what's kept the agency afloat.
When you've got the legislature taking away their general funds every year and saying go out and get those monies from logging and user fees, what the Division of Forestry is forced to do is do that. They want to continue going on. And whether I agree with it or not, that's what they have to do if they want to continue to operate.
But Seifert says even if he were meeting with the governor or legislators and had the chance to make a plea for more money for his department, he's not sure he would.
It's not my job to make the pitch for the money. My job is to manage the forest, and we do a pretty good job with it.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Sarah Whitmire.
Stant, along with the leaders of half a dozen other environmental groups, sent a letter to the DNR's director last week asking for more time for public comment on the plan. Specifically, they're asking for a 60-day public comment period and 2 additional public meetings in locations closer to state forest in the southern part of the state. Now for headlines, we go over to Lindsay Wright, who has the latest on this week's top stories.
Thank you, Joe. Well, 20,000 people are expected to be in attendance tonight as Pope Francis presides over Mass at Madison Square Garden in New York City. The Pope arrived in the U.S. Tuesday for a 6-day visit. This is his first trip to the United States as Pope, but despite growing interest in the Pope's leadership, the U.S. saw a 3% decline in Catholics between 2007 and 2014. Becca Costello reports on how the Pope has affected the experiences of Catholics here in Indiana.
Nuns on the Bus is part of Network, a national Catholic social justice lobby. The nuns have been traveling around the country visiting various nonprofit groups and spreading what they consider to be a message of hope from Pope Francis. They stopped in Indiana last week, just before heading to Washington, D.C. to meet the Pope when he arrived in the U.S. on Tuesday.
Our effort is to share that word and then gather stories from people in places that the Pope can't go to bridge the divides, transforming our politics.
Pope Francis has been vocal in his advocacy for environmental policy reform, critique of capitalism, and insistence on care for the poor. Not all Catholic leaders consider the Pope's solutions to be good for the Church, however. Constance Fury is a professor of religious studies at Indiana University. She has been studying the various responses to Pope Francis.
There's a large number of people who find it alienating to have this sense. They see the Pope as representing a kind of modern acceptance of relativism.
Earlier this month, Pope Francis ordered changes in the official procedure for annulments. A Catholic annulment declares a marriage invalid after a divorce, which allows the couple to remarry without sin. The changes make it simpler and faster to get an annulment. Adjunct Judicial Vicar Fred Easton sees both support and disagreement for this recent change.
There are some canonists out there that are not opposed but have some questions and some concerns that will this loosening of the procedure in some ways, even the elimination of the mandatory appeal, lead to bad decisions.
Some Catholics want the Church to go even further by granting divorced and remarried Catholics the right to receive communion during Mass.
The question is, can you make any accommodation without violating our basic teachings on marriage? That's the rub, shall we say.
Although Catholicism is growing worldwide, about 40% of Catholic adults in the United States have now left the Church. The future of the Catholic Church may depend on what Pope Francis chooses to do next. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Becca Costello.
DNR officials are worried about the possibility that anglers might be bringing Asian carp into Lake Monroe. Harrison Wagner has the story.
Division of Fish and Wildlife biologist David Kataka says the fish were detected a couple weekends ago in Salt Creek, just below the Lake Monroe Dam.
As recently as a couple weekends ago, one of our summer aides was down here just basically sightseeing and actually saw fish, Asian carp, jumping into the tailwaters.
Asian carp are an invasive species. Kataka says it's quite possible anglers who cast netted the fish in the creek use them as bait in Lake Monroe. It's illegal to do that. You can't take fish from one waterway and use it as live bait in another body of water. The carp are nearly identical to another invasive fish, the gizzard shad. It's already in Lake Monroe.
I guess the difference is that gizzard shad are much more sensitive and generally would probably die in a bucket pretty quickly. These Asian carp are proven to be a little bit more durable.
The DNR has posted signs and banners near the lake to help anglers recognize Asian carp and stop it from spreading.
And being a water supply lake, if there were to be an introduction of Asian carp or any other invasive species, there's really nothing we could do about it.
The state recently passed a law prohibiting the use of live gizzard shad as bait.
And Kataka says that due to the heavy rains this summer, the high discharge from Lake Monroe provided a ready avenue for the young carp to swim upstream towards the tailwaters. One of the companies involved in the 2011 State Fair stage collapse wants the state to be responsible for its payments to victims. MidAmerica Sound argued before the state Supreme Court this week that language on the invoice it submitted to the state indemnifies it from any liability. The state contends that Indiana law prevents it from exempting any private contractor from liability. 7 people died in the stage collapse and more than 100 were injured. The state has paid out $11 million to victims. The amount of damages MidAmerica faces remains under court seal. The Supreme Court could issue a definitive ruling on the case or send it back to the trial court level for further proceedings. Indiana is joining 26 other states in a joint investigation of Volkswagen. The automotive manufacturer admits it's used software designed to deceive emissions testers in 11 million of its diesel engines. As Alexander McCall reports, some local Volkswagen owners say they're devastated by the news.
Some Volkswagen engines produced up to 40 times the maximum emissions allowed by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Now 11 million diesel Volkswagen vehicles are being recalled, including more than 500,000 in the United States. Alan Barker owns a 2012 Jetta TDI sport wagon. He says he bought the car partially because of its perceived low impact on the environment.
One of the primary reasons why I bought the car has proved wrong, and I feel duped. I feel betrayed. I feel awkward driving the car. And sort of one of the primary reasons why I bought the car has gone away.
And it may prove difficult for the auto manufacturer to regain car buyers' trust.
But it feels worse than a mistake. It feels like something that was calculated, and they probably assumed, they did their risk assessment and assumed that nobody would find out.
Volkswagen issued a statement on its website saying it doesn't tolerate any kind of violation of laws. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Alexander McCall.
A criminal investigation from the United States Justice Department is also underway. Congressman and civil rights icon John Lewis says change can be accomplished without violence. During an event in Bloomington this week, Lewis reflected on current struggles facing African Americans and encouraged people to work together to effect change. Jordan Sharp reports.
Lewis delivered a lecture at the IU Auditorium along with Andrew Iden and Nate Powell, who all worked together on the March trilogy, which details Lewis's life and fight for civil rights. Lewis says that he hopes these books will inspire both young and old Americans.
March, book 1 and book 2 are saying to all of us that we can do it. We can change things. We can create a new America, a better America. We're saying in effect that we're one people, we're one family, we live in the same house, the American house, the world house, that we must look out for each other, care for each other. and we can do it.
The first two books cover Lewis and his early life in Alabama, including when he met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as well as the Freedom Rides and March on Washington. Lewis added that while we live in a different and better America than the one he grew up in, he ended his speech with, quote, "We're not there yet." The final book in the series is expected to be released sometime next year. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Jordan Sharp.
And Joe, Lewis says he hopes his books can be used as tools to inspire young people.
A strong message. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Coming up next to Indiana Newsdesk. A new organization that will fill the void that INCASA left, providing aid for sexual assault victims. We sit down with one of the group's newly appointed board members to learn more about how the agency will work to end sexual assault in Indiana. Cat cafes, they're a big thing overseas, and the first one could be coming to Indiana. Find out where and when you might be able to enjoy a cup of joe while cuddling your favorite feline. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
I can change the world with my own two hands, make it a better place with my own two hands. I'm gonna make it a brighter place with my own two hands. I'm gonna help the human race with my own two hands. I can hold you in my own two hands, and I can comfort you with my own two hands. With my own two hands.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. There is a new nonprofit organization dedicated to helping sexual assault victims. The group fills the role vacated when the Indiana Coalition Against Sexual Assault, or INCASA, fell apart last year. Brandon Smith reports on how the new organization will work to continue INCASA's mission.
The new organization is called the Indiana Coalition to End Sexual Assault. Using public and private dollars, it will connect sexual assault service efforts around the state, provide support for victims, and training for advocates. The coalition's board will be led by Frank Polisi. He says INCASA, which the new group replaces, fell apart last year due to fiscal insolvency brought on by what Polisi calls mismanagement.
There wasn't a big accountability between the board and the staff. We're going to make that much different initiative. We're going to prioritize accountability all along the board, all along with the staff.
Laura Berry is one of Indiana's leading sexual assault victim advocates. She says she's impressed by the new coalition, which includes several business leaders.
Well, I think they have some strong abilities with their board members who can open up some doors for them to be able to seek funding.
Attorney General Greg Zeller and State Representative Christina Hale will also sit on the board. Polisi says it was important to him to have state officials engaged in the group. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Brandon Smith.
Representative Christina Hale is on the board of the new agency. She joins us now from the State House. Thank you very much for joining us. But we have to start with kind of that age-old question, is funding. How will this new agency be funded?
Joe, thank you for asking. We're going to be pursuing both public and private funding just to get started, and we're basically starting from scratch. However, the General Assembly did pass some funds through the ICJI last year, this past session, and we have some other resources, so we'll be very assertive in getting going right away.
About how much money are we talking about?
Well, certainly we'll be needing some startup costs. So we're working on the budgeting process right now. We're being very deliberate. We're starting with just a skeleton staff, but ramping up and preparing to be full-blown, up and going as soon as possible.
And you speak of some agencies to help funding. What are some of those agencies that you can help or go and reach out to?
Well, another member of the board is going to be our State Commissioner of Health. So we're looking to that department. We're looking to ICJI, the Criminal Justice Institute, and others. we just want to ensure, that we're doing something actively, urgently. This is a terrible problem in Indiana by any measure. We've all heard the figure that you've reported on so well regarding 1 in 6 girls of high school age being sexually assaulted in our state. So this has been a very unfortunate situation, but we're rallying now to make sure that things get done and not another moment is wasted.
You mentioned that statistic. How does this group, or how will this group go ahead to go and fight sexual assault then?
Well, right now there is no statewide voice in terms of advocacy in the State House or any place else. That's going to be a big piece of this, but also we need to better train people. Adults working with children, adults working with adults on campus. We've certainly seen in the past week, just here in Indiana, how serious that problem is for us. We've got to get people knowing what to do in these bad situations, helping people to report when they have been victims, and also just creating a culture of compassion so that people understand when they're at a party in a bad situation, what they can do to step up and help a bad situation from getting worse, and also to help their friends and family members report when at all possible.
Thank you very much, Christina, for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for reporting on this issue, Joe.
A pair of Bloomington entrepreneurs wants to open the state's first cat cafe by the end of the year. The cat cafe allows people to enjoy refreshments while also enjoying the company of freely roaming felines. The concept has taken off overseas, and as Barbara Brozier reports, they're confident the same will happen in Indiana.
He's a big boy. He's a big boy.
You could say Elizabeth Rettig is a bit of a cat lady.
I adopted my cat 2 years ago, and I've been cat-oriented ever since.
So much so, she's hoping to launch a business in Bloomington that revolves around just that.
It's a coffee shop meets an adoption center.
City Kitty and Brews will be the first cat cafe in the state. Patrons can grab a cup of coffee or a pastry and also spend some time getting to know a few cats.
We think Bloomington in particular is a good place for this because Bloomington, home of IU, is also home to 45,000 students who are not allowed to keep pets in their dorms. So people who maybe cannot keep pets or miss their furry friends at home, a lot of apartment complexes also don't allow pets. We're hoping they're going to come in and get their cat and caffeine fix and be able to enjoy what they can't otherwise enjoy.
Rettig is partnering with Bloomington Animal Care and Control. The shelter will give Rettig cats to foster. There will be 5 or 6 in the cafe at a time, and all of them will be available for adoption.
Any place we can get our cats out to get more people able to view them, that increases their adoption success.
The shelter never has a shortage of adoptable cats. At any given time, there might be as many as 80 cats here looking for a permanent home. Interacting with the animals at the cafe gives people the chance to get to know them in a less chaotic setting. And Director of Animal Care and Control, Virgil Souter, says that allows their personalities to shine through.
The adult cats, really their personality is what sell them. I mean, everybody sees the cute kittens and that's easy to get out the door, but the adult cats, you really need to look at that personality. And this is a place where people can do that.
The cafe's already cleared several hurdles with the county zoning board and health department. Because this is uncharted territory, the Monroe County Health Department has been working closely with the state to make sure everything is up to code. The business will have to comply with the same sanitation requirements as all other restaurants.
One of the sections does address live animals, and it in general does prohibit live animals in the retail food establishment in their operational areas. So that would mean that any live animals would need to be in a separate area away from the food preparation and food service.
City Kitty and Brews will keep its cafe area separate from the cat zone. There will also be hand washing stations placed throughout the shop.
The only obstacle left is to come up with funding for the cafe. Rettig and her business partner have launched a GoFundMe campaign, hoping to raise $25,000 so they can open the business by the end of the year. Once they raise the money, they'll lease a building for the cafe. And when that happens, they have big plans for where it will take them.
The sky's the limit with what we want to do. Oh my gosh, we have so many good ideas, like for many things, for events, Kitten Saturdays, senior to senior outreach programs, box fort building events for kids and cats. Like, we have so many cool ideas, but we're limited by what we'll be able to afford.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Barbara Brozier.
The GoFundMe campaign has generated more than $3,000 for the Cat Cafe so far. Reddick is hoping to set up shop in a building on Bloomington's Kirkwood Avenue. And you might remember this scene at last year's marathon in Columbus. Runners had to avoid a moving train. It crossed through the course and runners passed under the train in front of it and even climbed over it. The race happens again tomorrow, and organizers say the railroad company has assured them no train will be passing through during the race.
It'll be completely safe. I mean, like I said, not something we're worried about this year. I think we've gone above and beyond what we would have done, if we didn't have that issue. So we've taken every measure we can, and it'll be a safe race. We're looking forward to it.
And Tucker says they made some other changes, most notably taking out all the hills. So in her words, the course is flat as a pancake. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following: Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less.
Smithville Fiber, the Gigacity Company, fiber internet, HD, and digital IPTV in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.